Good morning. Can you believe it's July? July 1st. We're halfway through the year. How's your year going? 6 months down? It's not the year we expected, but it's the year we have. And I think we're doing pretty good. I think we're getting through the year okay. We're really gaining that grit that the market promised us, and it will definitely serve us well for the next decade or so. So hang in there. It's July 1st is an awkward week. July 4th is in the middle of the week, Thursday. It feels like a lot of people are coasting through this week. And, that's of course when people coast is when we can create those inches of separation or those sometimes yards or miles of separation. As Ed Milet would say, it's separation season. Whenever you're around a holiday, it's definitely separation season. Now, that being said, I am in beautiful Carlsbad, California. It is unbelievable here. It's great to smell the salt air from the ocean, and it's 40 degrees or 35 degrees less than my home in Scottsdale. I think it was 114 in Scottsdale yesterday, and it's 77 or 75 here in Carlsbad. Matter of fact, I have to wear a pullover to go for a run because it's chilly out there. That's very different. But today's topic, I'm really I came across a phenomenal article called "The True Cost of Selling a Home" by Jamie Dunaway Seal, I should say, published by Clever. And this article is, I want to say it's like 15 pages of straight out great data. And what they did is they have surveyed 1,000 home sellers, and they came up with a bunch of great data. I want to share some of that with you, but I really want to encourage, if you're a real estate or mortgage professional, go check out this article. You can access it through my LinkedIn. I think I have a post that will be up, around 7:30 this morning that talks about this article, but more importantly has a link to it. Super easy to get to. And full disclosure, I think I was exposed to this article through Mortgage Nuggets. That's another great little newsletter. Comes out Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays. Usually highlights 3 or 4 topics. I think I read about that in their newsletter first, and then am sharing it with you now. But here's some of the data. And so far in 2024, the typical homeowner spent about $54,000 to sell their home. And 42% of them said that was much higher than they expected. And then there's all sorts of other great data that comes up, including 89% of sellers have regrets about selling their home. Now, as I go through the data from this article, what that really, what I felt, is that just we can do a much better job of informing sellers of the cost and empowering them with choices. Because a lot of the responses they're going to give you, they're more emotional than data. It's more like, gosh, I miss my house, or gosh, I didn't know it was going to cost so much, or I didn't know how to do this, or I didn't know this was going to happen. And I think we could just give sellers a lot more confidence and a lot more satisfaction if we take more time to educate them and make them feel about the choices they make, and that we could really change the perception of how this goes on. So I'm going to start going through. Some of the costs. So when I said the typical homeowner spends about $54,616 to sell their home, here's some of the statistics. Now, from the sellers that did not use an agent, not surprisingly, they did so because they wanted to save money. I'll share a couple of statistics in a minute, but mostly they wanted to save money. However, people who didn't use a real estate agent sold their home for, on average, $34,000 less than similar homes with people that used an agent. So you really didn't save money by not using an agent. About 80% of sellers followed their real estate agent's advice on what kind of repairs they needed to do before sell. Although so 80% followed their advice, but 67% said they weren't comfortable with the recommendations and had to spend more than they wanted on the repairs. So an agent goes in and goes, hey, you got to fix this, this, and this. Most of the sellers did it, but then they were like, I didn't want to do it, and so there's an opportunity to kind of communicate better on why you have to do it. Now, about 89% of sellers, I said, had regrets about selling their house. Most common regrets included selling too quickly. That was 30%. missing their old home, meaning they wouldn't have sold if they would have, in retrospect, 29%. And then not selling for enough money was 28%. Crazy, right? About 89% of sellers had a compromise on the priorities in selling their home, whether they had to sell for less or had to sell faster or whatever it happened to be. Um, Sellers are 80% more likely to sell their home below asking price in 2024 than they were in 2022, which makes total sense, right? There's more concessions today. More than half the sellers had to reduce their asking price, 58%. And over a third of sellers, 34%, were not satisfied with the final sale price of the home. Interesting, right? And a majority of homeowners thought that if they took a different approach or used different strategies to sell their home, they could have sold for more than $50,000 than what they got. So isn't that disappointing? That means half the sellers think the agent didn't have a great strategy or didn't do a good job. And that's just, well, I think, once again, education, right? So there you go. So here's how the prices break down roughly. Seller's agent commission, a little over 11,000. Buyer's agent commission, about 10,500. Repairs, 10,000. Closing costs, 8,000. Buyer concessions, 7,200. Moving costs, 3,200. Marketing costs, 2,300. Staging costs, 2,200. So that's how you get to the 54,000. This article has a ton of great, useful charts. You can use it in your presentations. Really good. If I was a real estate agent, I would go through these perceptions with my buyers to make sure that I overcome their objections, I overcome their emotions. And if I was a loan officer, I would bring this up in my one-on-ones with my real estate agents to ask about how we can give our customers better satisfaction, how we give them better confidence, type of thing. So keep it on. Now this is really interesting. Okay, so sellers who didn't believe that the sellers that didn't believe their agents did a great job. So the ones that, and you can read this and figure out, I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but they said, so half the sellers, 50% said their agents failed them. Half the sellers. Is that crazy? And then 57% said their agents advice let them down. 53% say their agent made mistakes with their listings. And 50% say their agent didn't communicate enough. Now, I posted an article a couple months ago about expectations on seller communication, and it was crazy. It was like something like 37% of sellers expected to receive a communication, a call from their agent every single day, even if the agent didn't have anything to report. So their expectations are crazy, but we have to understand what expectations are. We got to better serve them because that number is just bad. Agents do a great job. That's a super unfair agent. So we know about that. Let's keep going. So sorry. So the ones that chose not to use an agent, this is really interesting. It's the first home sellers that chose not to use an agent. 58% thought it'd be more convenient to not use an agent. Wow. 57% thought they could sell the house faster, and 57% wanted to handle their own showings and negotiations. Yet almost everybody that did not use an agent was unsatisfied with their representation. They're unsatisfied with their own work. There's just some irrational stuff in here, but there's stuff to learn, all right? Even though it's irrational, how do we get to customer satisfaction? How do we get to a wow client? If they're going to start kind of prejudiced against our service, we really have to overcome it. As I mentioned, sellers typically spend about $10,000 on home improvements. 32% are made prior to the listing. 28% are made before the listing, but after negotiating with the buyer. So before the listing, nobody's seen it. Kind of a pocket listing. They get feedback from a buyer, and then they do the repairs, or 16% repairs with negotiating with the buyer. Of the repairs, about 35% were for plumbing. 35% of sellers spent money on repairing plumbing. 31% of sellers spent money fixing the kitchen. 31% on electrical systems. 29% straining on painting, and 28% on roof. Now that means you can spend money on plumbing in the kitchen, or you can spend on multiple items. That's why that doesn't add up to 100%. But that's how what people spent their money on. Interesting. Sellers average giving $7,200 in buyer concessions. Some of the other concessions that sellers made, 32% reduced their price, 32% offered a home warranty, 31% let buyers keep at least part of their furniture, 29% made additional repairs, and 29% had a flexible closing date. So really interesting data in this, right? Um, so as you look at this, right? And if you look at compromises that sellers made that they didn't want to make, with selling on their own timeline, selling to the right buyer, selling too quickly, finding a more affordable real estate agent, selling without making repairs, selling above asking price, and selling without contingencies. Now, if you want to talk about things that sellers regret, 29% miss their old home. That's understandable, right? They lived in the home forever. It's understandable. 23% that sold without, or 23% total regret the agent they used. 23% thought their house on the market too long. 22% thought they waited too long to list their house. 22% felt they were pressured to accept an offer. And 21% thought the realtor commission was too high. Now that's great news, right? My realtor commission was too high. Well, gosh, yeah. 20% thought they should have done a sell by owner. You know, there's just so much opportunity. Like, you can look at this as negative. I just see this as so positive. Think how we can differentiate ourselves by just empowering sellers and making them feel comfortable and confident about the decisions they're making, right? And I don't know if I want to represent a seller that isn't going to appreciate my service. I have to figure out how to make sure my client knows my value and they're comfortable with my fee and they see my fee as a good deal and that they're excited about the process. Now, I can't help them mourning about the loss of their home, if they've been there for 50 years. I can't change their circumstances, but I can certainly try to make them feel better about it, right? Now, if sellers knew the true costs of selling their home, here's the choice: 1 in 3 would have made different decisions, or 89% would have made different decisions. But so 89% would make a different decision. They knew how much it was going to cost. 36% would have listed their home for more, which makes no sense. Your house is going to sell what your house is. The listing price is simply a marketing point to attract people that are interested in a range of prices, right? You can list it for $100,000, but if it's worth $700,000, it's going to end up selling for $700,000. And you can list it for $1 million, and if it's worth $700,000, it'll probably sell for $650,000, right? I mean, it's the open market. The listing is just in a marketing. But anyway, 35% would have waited for more offers. 32% would have negotiated harder with the buyer. 31% would have waited until home prices increase. And 31% would have negotiated the commission with their agent. So under the regrets, that's what they regretted. That's what they would have done. And so there you go. This is a really, really good article. But like I said, I would read this article and go, how can I differentiate myself, and how can I somehow get my sellers to be delighted about my services and to be delighted about the process? I mean, this is something you sell $1 million home and it sells, it goes under contract in 2 weeks and it closes in 30 days. I mean, how many people do that large a transaction, that complicated a transaction in weeks? After maybe living in a house for 50 years, I get the emotional baggage that comes with moving from a house, but we just have to do so much better. And by the way, if you're a loan officer listening to this, we play a role too. We are partners with our real estate partners. If as a loan officer, our client doesn't appreciate services from their agent, that's going to cast a shadow on us too. They're going to paint us all with the same brush. We have to all work together to get home sellers to really appreciate the services they're getting and to value them. And it's a little bit of this education. So there you go. Check out the article, The True Cost of Selling a Home in 2024. It's up on my LinkedIn page. You can click through it. As mentioned, it's an awkward week. I'll be busy all week. I'll be coming to you every single day. I may or may not do my new normal series on Thursday because I really love that series and I don't want it to get lost in the holiday. We'll see. I appreciate any encouragement or feedback you get me. I keep working from different spaces, so sorry about that. The technology is still a challenge. But that's it. Have a great day. I look forward to talking to you guys again soon. Bye.